Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the hidden teachings of Jesus, the political meaning of the Kingdom of God by deHaven-Smith. Now I know what you're thinking. John, talking about religion, is everything okay? But trust me on this one, because this book isn't your typical Sunday school lesson. deHaven-Smith argues that Jesus' message wasn't just about personal salvation. It was a radical political manifesto that challenged the power structures of his time. In this video, we'll explore 10 key teachings from the book and how they can be applied to modern-day life. Get ready to see Jesus and his message in a whole new light, one that might even inspire you to take action in your own community. Let's get started. So we've all heard the phrase Kingdom of God, but according to deHaven-Smith, Jesus meant something far more grounded, far more revolutionary when he spoke of the Kingdom of God. deHaven-Smith argues that Jesus envisioned the Kingdom of God as a political reality, a here-and-now transformation of society based on justice, equality, and radical love. This wasn't some far-off utopia. It was a call to action, a blueprint for dismantling the oppressive systems of his day and building a more just world. It's a call to examine the systems of power in our own world, the economic inequality, the racial injustice, the political corruption, and ask ourselves, how can we build the Kingdom of God here and now? Okay, let's be real for a second. Nobody likes being told what to do. We all have that rebellious streak, that inner voice that screams, "You're not the boss of me." But here's the thing, challenging authority can be a good thing, even a necessary thing, especially when that authority is unjust or oppressive. And if there was ever someone who knew a thing or two about challenging authority, it was Jesus.
Throughout his ministry, Jesus constantly challenged the religious and political elite, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Roman authorities. He questioned their hypocrisy, their love of power, their disregard for the poor and the outcast. But here's where Jesus' approach gets really radical. He didn't challenge authority with violence or hatred. He did it with love, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to truth. He taught his followers to turn the other cheek, to love their enemies, to resist injustice with non-violent resistance. It's a challenging message, one that requires courage, resilience, and a deep well of love.
It's a sad truth that throughout history, the poor and marginalized have often been treated as invisible, as problems to be solved or, even worse, ignored. But in the eyes of Jesus, the poor and marginalized were not problems to be fixed. They were his friends, his companions, the very heart of his message.
Think about it. Jesus surrounded himself with those that society had cast aside: the sick, the poor, the tax collectors, the prostitutes. These were the people he ate with, healed, and shared his message of hope and liberation. He saw their inherent dignity, their worth as human beings, and he constantly challenged the systems that kept them trapped in poverty and oppression. Jesus wasn't content to simply bandage the wounds of the oppressed. He wanted to dismantle the systems that created those wounds in the first place. What would it look like for us to center the needs of the poor and marginalized in our own communities, in our own policies, in our own hearts?
Chapter 4. Turning the Other Cheek. Radical Love as Resistance. All right, let's talk about one of the most often misunderstood and, frankly, controversial teachings of Jesus: turning the other cheek. It's a phrase that's often misinterpreted as a call for passivity, for simply accepting injustice and violence.
But deHaven-Smith argues that turning the other cheek is anything but passive. In the context of Jesus' time, under the brutal rule of the Roman Empire, turning the other cheek was a radical act of defiance. It was a way of saying, "You may have the power to harm my body, but you will not break my spirit." It's a challenging message, one that requires immense strength and resilience.
Chapter 5. Sharing is caring. Jesus and the redistribution of wealth. Let's be honest, money can be a touchy subject. We all need it to survive, but how much is too much? And what happens when the gap between the rich and the poor becomes a chasm, a gaping wound in the fabric of society?
Well, Jesus had a lot to say about wealth, and it might not be what you expect. Throughout his ministry, Jesus constantly challenged the wealthy and powerful, urging them to share their wealth with the poor and marginalized. Jesus saw the hoarding of wealth as a form of violence, a way of perpetuating inequality and suffering. It's a message that's as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago, as we grapple with widening income inequality, a shrinking middle class, and an economic system that often seems rigged against the poor and working class.
Chapter 6. The Kingdom of God. It starts today. It's easy to think of the kingdom of God as some far-off paradise, something we achieve after we die. But Jesus taught that the kingdom of God wasn't just a distant promise, it was a present reality, a way of living that could transform our lives and our world, starting right here, right now.
Think about it. Jesus didn't just talk about the kingdom of God, he lived it. He healed the sick, fed the hungry, embraced the outcast, and challenged the powerful. He showed us that the kingdom of God wasn't some abstract theological concept. It was about love, compassion, justice, and radical inclusion, all put into action. It's about treating everyone we meet with dignity and respect, regardless of their background, beliefs, or social status. It's about choosing love over hate, forgiveness over resentment, and hope over despair, even when the world around us seems dark and divided.
We live in a world obsessed with categories, with labels, with putting people into neat little boxes. But Jesus, well, he wasn't a fan of boxes. In fact, he spent a lot of his time breaking down the walls that divided people, challenging the social norms that kept them separate and unequal.
Think about the people Jesus surrounded himself with. Tax collectors, prostitutes, Samaritans, people who were considered outcasts, sinners, the dregs of society. He ate with them, healed them, and treated them with a level of dignity and respect that shocked the religious elite. He saw past their labels, past their perceived sins, and recognized their shared humanity, their inherent worth as children of God. What deHaven-Smith wants us to consider is that Jesus' radical embrace of the other is a challenge to the ways we divide ourselves, the ways we dehumanize those who are different from us. It's a call to look beyond the labels, to see the humanity in every person we meet, and to build bridges of understanding and compassion instead of walls of fear and division. In a world often consumed by nationalism, borders, and the pursuit of national interest, it's easy to forget that the message of Jesus transcended the political boundaries of his time. It wasn't a message just for the Jews or for the Romans, it was a message for all of humanity, a message that recognized the interconnectedness of all people. Jesus' teachings on love, compassion, and justice weren't bound by geography or ethnicity. They were universal principles, applicable to all people, in all places, at all times. He taught his followers to love their neighbors. And by neighbors, he didn't just mean the people who lived next door. He meant everyone, regardless of their background, beliefs, or nationality. It's a message that's more relevant than ever in our interconnected world, where the challenges we face, from climate change to economic inequality to global pandemics, require global cooperation and solidarity.
We often think of love as this soft, mushy feeling, something we see in romantic comedies or Hallmark movies. But for Jesus, love was anything but sentimental. It was a force to be reckoned with, a power that could transform individuals, communities, and even entire nations.
Love for God, love for humanity, even love for his enemies. This was the driving force behind everything he did. He taught his followers that love wasn't just a feeling, it was an action, a way of being in the world that had the power to heal divisions, break down barriers, and create lasting change. It's about recognizing the inherent dignity and worth of every human being, even those who are different from us, even those who have wronged us.
It's easy to feel hopeless these days. We're bombarded with news of war, poverty, injustice, and environmental catastrophe. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, to succumb to cynicism, to believe that things will never change.
Think about it. Jesus lived under Roman occupation, a brutal regime that crushed dissent and exploited the poor. Yet, even in the face of such overwhelming power, Jesus never gave up hope. It's about choosing to believe in the possibility of change, even when it seems impossible, even when we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the hidden teachings of Jesus, the political meaning of the kingdom of God. It's a book that challenges us to see Jesus' teachings not just as words on a page, but as a radical call to action, a blueprint for a more just and compassionate world. Remember, these teachings are not just historical insights, but powerful principles that can inspire real change in our world today. They call us to question authority, to stand up for the marginalized, to embrace nonviolence, and to live out our values in every aspect of our lives. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful content. And until next time, keep asking those tough questions, keep fighting for a better world, and never underestimate the power of love to change the world.